Imagine waking up as the Queen Consort of the United Kingdom, fully convinced that every crown jewel, every historic artifact, and every centuries-old vault in the British Empire is open to your command, only to find out that within 9 swift hours, your authority has been systematically frozen, your key advisors evicted, and your access to the royal collection permanently revoked. That is precisely the explosive reality that unfolded inside the highest corridors of Buckingham Palace and the Royal Courts of Justice, marking one of the most ruthless administrative power shifts in modern royal history. What began as a routine requisition request for the legendary Vladimir Tiara ended with a legal masterclass executed by Catherine, Princess of Wales, supported by the resolute force of Princess, and leaving Queen Camilla isolated, stripped of her inner media circle and standing outside an elite law firm in Mayfair. To understand how this dramatic showdown exploded into the open, one must trace the timeline back to early morning when Sir Andrew McFarland, president of the family division at the Royal Courts of Justice, took an unprecedented step. Deep inside a judicial vault sat a heavily guarded safe containing 33 sealed royal wills, documents that are traditionally kept under a strict 90-year embargo to protect the monarchy from internal strife and public scandal. Unsealing one of these historic documents before its time requires an extraordinary legal burden of proof, specifically showing that an internal dispute threatens the core integrity of the crown itself. Yet at precisely 8:15 in the morning, the seal was formally broken to reveal a binding, unyielding clause left behind by the late Queen Elizabeth II. For months, Queen Camilla's office had been coordinating with the director of the royal collection, assuming that her title granted her automatic requisition rights over the primary royal heritage assets, specifically targeting the magnificent Vladimir Tiara, an irreplaceable masterpiece valued at nearly $15 million. Camilla's team had already begun scheduling its preparation for upcoming high-profile diplomatic functions. However, when the late Queen's will was read before the assembled legal representatives, the text was absolute and devastating to Camilla's administration. Queen Elizabeth II had written an explicit clause directing that management, custody, and exclusive use of the Vladimir Tiara belongs solely and permanently to Catherine, Princess of Wales, completely nullifying any secondary claims made by any current or future Queen Consort. When legal counsel representing Queen Camilla attempted to argue that Her Majesty required unimpeded access to fulfill her constitutional and diplomatic duties on the world stage, the presiding judicial authorities shut down the argument instantly. The court firmly established that the Royal Collection Trust is governed by the explicit, legally binding instructions of the sovereign who acquired or designated the asset, proving that personal title alone cannot bypass sovereign directives. This legal ruling immediately triggered internal protocol RC 0805, an operational freeze that placed a mandatory compliance review on every high-value asset request made by Queen Camilla. By 10:45 in the morning, the Privy Council officially ratified the court's findings, stripping Camilla of her executive privilege to bypass trust approvals and effectively handing the master oversight of the vault to Catherine. Yet an unsealable is only as strong as the institutional force willing to enforce it. That force arrived in the form of Princess and during a high-stakes emergency meeting held in Room K of St. James's Palace, a secure 42-square-meter space specifically chosen because it is swept for electronic bugs and contains no recording equipment. Princess did not enter the room to negotiate or play mediator in a personal family dispute. She entered to execute a constitutional line in the sand, placing a classified dossier alongside a secure digital drive containing an unreleased, highly sensitive audio recording from Queen Elizabeth's final days at Balmoral onto the conference table, Princess, and delivered an unmistakable ultimatum to the sovereign's representatives and Privy Council members. Either the individuals attempting to manipulate royal assets and override sovereign directives are removed immediately, or the evidence goes directly to the House of Commons under parliamentary privilege. The weight of Princess and threat sent shockwaves through the room because triggering parliamentary privilege would force an immediate government inquiry into the sovereign grant, the taxpayer funding that maintains the entire royal ecosystem. A public inquiry of that magnitude would inevitably lead to a devastating vote of no confidence regarding palace financial management, threatening the stability of the monarchy itself. Cornered by the sheer risk of institutional damage, the king's representatives conceded. Before the meeting adjourned, a summary dismissal order was drafted, systematically dismantling the administrative machinery that sustained Camilla's influence inside Clarence House. While the legal battle over the royal wills was sending shockwaves through the royal courts of justice and the restricted briefing rooms of St. James's Palace, the true operational impact of this power shift was about to hit the quiet corridors of Clarence House with terrifying speed and precision. To neutralize a rival administration inside palace walls, securing a tiara in a vault is only the first phase. The second and far more decisive phase is systematically dismantling the public relations engine that fuels their narrative. At precisely 12:30 in the afternoon, while Queen Camilla's inner circle of advisors were quietly carrying out their daily routine, a specialized royal protection detail entered the private executive suite without warning. 4 of her most senior aides, including her primary private secretary and top communications director, who had spent years carefully sculpting her public image across global media networks, were suddenly confronted with an immediate, non-negotiable institutional eviction. There were no preliminary human resources discussions, no exit negotiations, and no quiet transition periods offered. Before any of the aides could step back to their desks or attempt to send a single emergency transmission, the Palace Information Technology Department executed a complete digital network blackout across all their registered accounts. Their Level 4 security clearances, which granted them unfettered access to highly confidential royal schedules, private diplomatic correspondence, and internal palace logistics, were permanently revoked in an instant under the direct supervision of security officers. These high-ranking strategists were strictly forbidden from touching their palace-issued laptops, secure tablets, or paper files. Within 15 short minutes, the entire public relations infrastructure that Camilla had built over decades to defend her standing and push her personal agenda was completely wiped out, leaving her abruptly isolated from the media landscape without a voice or a team to manage the fallout. While Camilla's communications shield was being surgically dismantled across town, Catherine, Princess of Wales, executed a quiet yet masterclass administrative move inside Buckingham Palace that sealed her absolute authority over the monarchy's assets. At precisely 2:45 in the afternoon, Catherine entered the historic white drawing room, dressed in a tailored dark navy coat dress, projecting an atmosphere of utter seriousness and calm confidence. There were no press crews, no photographers, and no dramatic statements issued to media. Walking directly to an antique mahogany desk, Catherine signed a single, highly classified document designated as Form 4 ARCD using a standard Parker fountain pen. To an outsider, it looked like routine paperwork. But within the rigid hierarchy of the Windsor dynasty, that single signature represented a definitive administrative checkmate. By executing Form 4 ARCT, Catherine officially activated her legal position as the co-president of the Royal Heritage Trust, an executive office that carries absolute, legally binding oversight over the physical and historical treasures of the crown. The master digital access protocols for the Royal Jewel Vault were immediately transferred to her private office, meaning that no physical key or security officer can open the steel doors without her direct authorization. Most importantly, the signature instituted a permanent, unavoidable administrative hurdle for Queen Camilla under the newly established protocol. If Camilla wishes to request any historic item with an insured valuation exceeding $100,000, the application can no longer be processed through a sympathetic vault manager. It must go directly to Catherine's desk. As the executive overseer, Catherine now possesses absolute veto power, allowing her to reject any request with a single click and without offering a word of justification or explanation to Queen Consort. As 5 o'clock approached and a heavy London drizzle blanketed them all, the physical reality of Camilla's total isolation was laid bare for the world to see, even if the public didn't yet realize the magnitude of what had transpired. The heavy iron gates of Buckingham Palace opened slowly, allowing a single black Bentley with a minimal security escort to exit onto the wet city streets without any police sirens, flashing lights, or official royal fanfare. At the exact same moment, the Royal Press Corps received a brief, unusual one-line statement from the Central Communications Desk stating simply that the Queen Consort required an extended period of rest at her private residence of Ray Mill House in Wiltshire. In the calculated language of the royal institution, this was not a restful retreat or a routine weekend away. It was what palace insiders recognized as a soft exile. by relocating Camilla to Ray House, a private property far removed from the centers of government and completely detached from the official palace communications infrastructure. The system effectively unplugged her from the royal operational mainframe. Without daily briefings, secure digital lines, or senior staff to execute her orders, her title as Queen Consort was stripped of its operational weight, turning her position into a purely ceremonial title. The firm had managed to achieve its ultimate goal, total administrative containment without the public mess of a formal demotion. But for a woman who spent 3 decades navigating fierce opposition to reach the top of the royal hierarchy, accepting defeat in 9 short hours was never going to be the end of the story. If you believe that a quiet departure under the grey London rain signals the absolute end of this royal power struggle, you are deeply underestimating the calculated resilience of a woman who spent 30 years fighting her way to the throne. It is easy to look at the silent motorcade, leaving Buckingham Palace, and assume that an administrative defeat in 9 short hours has permanently settled the institutional hierarchy. However, a closer examination of the exact timeline and vehicle movements from that fateful evening reveals that the real battle was not ending. It was merely shifting to an arena where the royal household holds zero authority. At precisely 6:12 in the evening, when Queen Camilla's convoy was officially logged as traveling west toward the rural isolation of Ray House, security tracking data paints a radically different and far more dangerous picture. Instead of taking the M4 highway toward Wiltshire, the black Bentley executed a sudden, unannounced detour back into the heart of central London. Navigating discreetly through evening traffic, the vehicle pulled up and idled for exactly 12 minutes outside number 44 Berkeley Square in Mayfair. This specific address has no connection to the royal estate, diplomatic missions, or charitable foundations. According to corporate registry records, this understated building houses the global headquarters of one of the most aggressive, high-profile civil litigation and family law firms in the United Kingdom. This is not a firm that deals with constitutional matters, sovereign grants, or royal heritage trusts. Their world-renowned expertise lies strictly in high-net-worth marital dissolution, complex international asset division, and enforcement of ironclad non-disclosure agreements. During those crucial 12 minutes outside Berkeley Square, eyewitness accounts recorded a remaining loyal aide stepping out of the idling Bentley carrying a single, unmarked black leather briefcase. That briefcase was handed directly to a senior legal representative waiting just inside the heavy oak doors of firm. While Catherine, Princess of Wales, and the Privy Council had successfully executed an administrative lockdown of the Windsor Jewel Vault and stripped Camilla's operational network inside the palace, their abrupt containment strategy may have inadvertently backed the Queen Consort into a dangerous corner. When an individual of high institutional standing is stripped of all internal channels, their only remaining leverage lies in the civil court system, a public, uncontrollable forum where royal protocol holds no weight. After 3 decades operating within the innermost circle of the monarchy, Queen Camilla possesses an unprecedented, intimate understanding of the financial, personal, and operational architecture of the royal family. She understands where every asset is hidden, how sovereign funds are allocated, and what private agreements exist behind closed palace doors. Was that brief 12-minute stop in Mayfair the opening gambit in preparing a massive civil filing? A legal move of that scale would not only challenge her personal marital framework, but could potentially force the judicial unsealing of sensitive royal financial documents that the firm has spent centuries keeping hidden from public scrutiny. By cutting off her administrative power, isolating her from her strategic team, and publicly transferring control of the Royal Heritage Trust to Princess Catherine, the palace leadership believed they had contained a crisis. Instead, they may have triggered a far more unpredictable storm. When internal doors are forcefully slammed shut, legal and financial avenues are forced wide open. The true question facing the British monarchy tonight is no longer whether they successfully secured the Vladimir Tiara or froze Queen Camilla's daily authority inside Buckingham Palace. The terrifying question that now echoes to the halls of power is whether pushing Camilla into total isolation has driven her toward the one arena where the crown has no jurisdiction, leaving the future stability of the Windsor dynasty hanging in the balance.